Hey everybody, Matthew Pillmore here. Thank you for checking out our YouTube channel, VIP Financial Ed. We have some extraordinary content that we teach on this channel, and essentially it's all about how to bank smarter, how to bank and borrow the right way, how to create wealth from debt. And you've seen our other trainings, you're probably beginning to realize just how extraordinary these techniques can be. And if you're joining us for the first time, welcome to the channel. Thank you so much for checking us out. I invite you to subscribe anytime you hear something that makes sense to you. And really, we're here to help you go further, faster financially. Today, I'm very excited to do another How Did We Do It episode. This is one of my favorite series. And this episode in particular is very cool because so many of my peers are still dealing with this lingering student loan debt. And it is designed to stick with you decade after decade. So I want to show you how this amazing couple, P and S being their initials, have initially started with coaching with $130,000 worth of current student loan balances. They have that alongside a mortgage and fairly significant non-mortgage related debts as well, aside from those student loans. So I want to show you how we eliminated 100% of these balances, including the mortgage, in under 7 years. Stick around. All right, guys, Matthew Pillmore here. We help you go further, faster financially, and we do that through the art of proper banking and turning debt into wealth. We love the act of leverage. We just want to leverage the right way. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Now, we focus on three very specific techniques, and these are the focal points of 100% of our proactive activity inside our banking design and our strategies. The first step is always the optimization of borrowing strength. This is credit profiles. So not just the scores, but going a little deeper than that, making sure we look and sound the way the banks want us to. That way we can go in and we can actually start to leverage those profiles into new and improved borrowing accounts. These are capital accounts that we call debt weapons. You'll see that in all of our trainings. So I want to make sure and encourage you to check out all of those videos. Just go in and look for some of the more popular classes. And yes, some of them are going to take a little time to get through. It might even take you upwards of 45 minutes to an hour, and it'll be well worth it. Game changers, folks. Now, after we get these capital accounts that we call debt weapons, we're putting these accounts to work. And we do that with the purpose of accelerating almost any financial goal. Now, financial goals are almost all isolated to two specific categories, and these obviously fall on both sides of the balance sheet, the asset growth side and the liability elimination side. And what we're going to focus on today is how having access to these accounts can provide so many more choices. Now, I do want to disclaim these classes in the series of How Did We Do It by saying this isn't the actual game plan that will unfold over the next 6 to 7 years for him and her. This is just simply an example of how much more quickly things can go. And unexpected circumstances will either speed that up or slow it down. I mean, we have to understand that, it's impossible to tell the future. So therefore, we're just simply putting together a hypothesis. And over time, the current action steps are designed based on the results of the previous action steps. Much like an athletic event. Picture a football game, for example. So this is a lot like the commentary during a halftime show, and we're just kind of identifying strengths and weaknesses from the first half of the game, and we're speculating the second half and trying to discuss how to exploit those strengths, but also minimize the weaknesses. And ultimately, that's how the game will be won. But the play calling on the field is really how the value ends up happening, how the game ends up unfolding. And what we really want to make sure you're able to do is take advantage of steps beyond just this lesson. So we're going to put a link in the description so that you can register for an exclusive one-on-one phone-based coaching session at absolutely no charge. This is a gift from us to you, our YouTube audience. You'll have one complimentary exclusive phone-based coaching session. And with any luck, we're going to rearrange things anytime possible to get your session on my calendar. So we'll be able to speak one-on-one with one another. And that's going to be really a lot of fun. I'm going to do the very same thing I'm going to do here with somebody else's circumstances for you, so you can see just how much faster things can unfold. Now, we're focusing on three main areas here. We're obviously looking at capital, but we can't get the capital without credit, and we can't advance our cash flow goals without that capital. So each step feeds the next. And it's really easy to remember those three steps because they all begin with C. This is the credit optimization step, along with the capital acquisition step, along with the cash flow optimization step. So those are perpetual in nature, which means there is no finish line to any one of them at any point. We plan on doing all three of those things until we die. And I'm going to show you why that's just as valuable as it is. This is something you don't want to neglect. Take a look at this cash flow cruncher spreadsheet from P&S. This was sent to us yesterday. I had this conversation yesterday, and I thought this is going to be a big one for those of you that are currently sitting on any non-mortgage related student loan debts. So we've got $10,348 worth of income. This is the cash flow summary page. I'm going to give you access to this cash flow cruncher spreadsheet. This is another gift from us to you just for joining us today and sitting through the entire training. And I'll give this website to you at some point through the training, so make sure you stick around until the end. So we've got $10,348 as total gross, or net rather, take home average income. We've got $1,330 worth of outstanding mortgage payments required. We've got $39 worth of lines of credit that are due on $3,889 worth of balances. We've got $489 of minimum payments on almost $40,000 worth of current credit cards. We've got other consumer-related debts totaling $1,513 of outstanding minimum monthly payment obligations on $149,000 worth of current balances. And then we've got both personal and business expenses totaling $4,793. So you can see the current net cash flow position. This is the average, totals $2,184. Now, we always rely on averages. Why? Because cash flow varies for every single one of us, right? Doesn't matter whether your income is consistent. Your expenses are not. So 100% of people that I've ever encountered have a fluctuating cash flow position. Sometimes our expenses are inconsistent, meaning we have to pay them maybe once or twice a year, but not every month. Sometimes our expenses are inconsistent in that we get caught by surprise with a cost that isn't normally a part of our everyday lives. So just keep in mind that when you're averaging your income and expenses, utilizing conservative numbers will allow surprises along the way to be as pleasant as possible. And that's something that really helps with motivation. So we've got $2,184 worth of current leftover disposable income. This is after all of their personal costs throughout the month have been paid for, okay? So this is what's left over after everything has been paid. We're gonna go through each page here quickly. We've got income, W-2'd. This is bi-monthly, meaning they're paid 2 set days of the month, either the 1st and the 15th, or the 15th and the last day of the month is typical. We've got $4,938 as an average after tax, after withholdings total. We've got a $4,810 total here for her. This is also W-2, but it's bi-weekly, which means that she gets 26 pay periods per year. So she's paid every other Friday, which means that if you divide that throughout the year, she's actually getting 13 months worth of pay periods. And therefore, since she's paid 3 times, a couple of times of the year in a month, she's actually getting a higher average than what it kind of seems based on multiplying each pay period times 2, if that makes sense. So she's got $4,810 in net income, take home. $600 is coming in from their parents. Their parents are currently living with them. Now, the urgency here is that he is under the gun at work. He's experiencing an exorbitant amount of stress, currently working as the lead engineer, and he's the only person in his department causing him to experience anxiety for the first time of his life. In fact, he was admitted to the hospital last November for heart problems as a result of his profession. So he's feeling a lot of pressure at this point to start replacing these income streams with more passive and residual streams of revenue. And loves the idea of being able to utilize debt weapons for that purpose. We talked a little bit about that as well. We're going to go through and show him how the cash flow increase can take place on the liability elimination side while he's also investing in new income streams. So every single year, the objective here is to get access to new capital accounts that can replace these debts. So let's take a look at the debts tab here at the bottom. You can see we've got this $230,000 Ocwen 30-year loan. Payment is $1,330. This is a fixed mortgage at 5%. You can see we've got a home equity line of credit, which is secured against that property at $3,889. This can also be a terrific tool for down payments, fix-up costs, vacancy costs, when these two begin to invest in real estate. It's considered an eligible form of down payment. The cool thing is, as they use this, we can actually pay off the amounts that they're using for down payments with other debt weapons and then use this again in order to acquire more property. We've got $18,271 currently due on an automobile loan for Kia. And you can see that we've got a lot of current credit cards totaling $122,700 worth of availability, which about $40,000 of that is used now. So $82,892 is still available. Almost all of these, as you will note, are currently, all of these balances are currently on business accounts that are not reporting to personal credit, which is great. And most of them are also on 0% interest rates, which we'll talk a little bit about through this example as well. And finally, certainly not least, the $130,700 that's currently owed on these student loans. Ouch. Okay, this is what will continue to stick with people. And you can see it's costing them $1,248 per month just to service these balances. Their monthly payment on their mortgage is only $1,330. So they're basically paying for two mortgages just to handle the leverage that they extended in order to get the education they have. Now, let's go ahead and analyze what happens next. So we take a look at their current credit positions, which are above the minimum we need in order to start acquiring our first set of debt weapons. Debt weapons come in thousands of types, and they change all the time. Debt weapons are here in good economies, debt weapons are here in bad economies, but as the economy fluctuates, so do the underwriting guidelines. So things can become easier and things can become more difficult depending on economic conditions. Our goal is to get at least $25,000 worth of new available debt weapon accounts each and every year. That's per household. And we'll do that by breaking it up per each member in the household. Now that number can be as high as $250,000 each year. So keep in mind that there really is no such thing as having access to too much money. The goal is getting the right debt weapon for the right purpose. We don't want to try and use the wrong vehicle for something that we need in order to accelerate our goals, which is why we diversify our inventory and collection and make that an ongoing priority. For most people, this will total between 2 to 8 new debt weapon accounts each year. So between 2 to 8 new debt weapons per year, totaling at least $25,000. So over the next couple of years, I want to see this family access upwards of $100,000. Now, like I said, $25,000 is really the minimum we're targeting, up to $250,000 per year. Given their experience and seeing that most of what is outstanding against them is not even reporting to their personal credit reports, I think $100,000 is completely reasonable as an objective. So we're going to use that number hypothetically in this example to start to manipulate the way these debts are being serviced. Because if we can bridge the gap between their net and gross cash flow positions, you can see that we are more than 250% improvement to their net cash flow position, right? So this is a tremendous benefit for this couple to not just worry about replacing income with better streams, but rather focus on the liability management side of this plan as well. And the idea is doing both at the same time. So we've now got this $100,000 of availability. We also know, like I said, that most of these accounts are not being reported to current credit. So there are 3 main areas we're going to focus on when identifying which accounts we're going to attack first. The very first category we focus on is this gray shaded column next to the interest rates. It says target on it. Now, on this worksheet, which you'll get a copy of here in a little while, you can see that the highest target rate will actually indicate the impact to cash flow. This number represents the minimum monthly payment divided by the balance owed. So if you look at this Hawaiian Airline business credit card account, a $151 minimum payment and a $6,106 balance, $151 is exactly 2.473% of $6,106. That's how that number is calculated. It's very important to have this number, which is why I love this spreadsheet, because I've never seen any other budget management spreadsheet utilize the formulas that are on this cash flow cruncher. It is comprehensive. It is fantastic. Almost everyone that we speak with that has gotten themselves a copy of this say, thank you, thank you, thank you. This thing is a huge help every single month. So we're going to start to look at the highest target rates, because this will indicate the highest impact to our net monthly cash flow position. And there's one very decisive conclusion that I've been able to draw over the last dozen years of helping thousands of people. And that's the more cash flow left over at the end of each month, the more choices you have. The less cash flow you have left over at the end of each month, the fewer choices you have. And perhaps you've been on both sides of that spectrum and you can relate to what I'm saying. I certainly have. And I'm here to tell you, when there is not money left over at the end of the month, you are going to feel your back up against a wall. So we want to try and leave as much disposable income available so that there is as much discretion with our choices as we can get. As much freedom of choice as possible is the underlying objective at all times. So we're going to look at the highest target rate before anything else. However, there are two other categories that we've got to pay attention to here. The second is the type of account, because the type of account will affect the impact to credit scores. So we're very concerned about how do we influence credit while we're borrowing new debt weapons and manipulating paying off debts more quickly. And the third and final category we're looking at is that of what the interest rates are. Now, I always say interest rates are interesting, and that's a little different for a lot of people to hear. Most of us in this country are far too obsessed with the interest rates. One of the single most common questions I get when talking about debt weapons is, what's the rate? What's the rate? What's the rate? And one of the first things I like to try and teach is interest rates matter. They just don't matter as much as you probably think they do. What matters most to you and to me as borrowers is how much in interest will I actually have to pay. It's the dollars and cents that you care about. And when you're calculating the total cost of interest, there's another significant piece to that equation, and it's the length of time that you're borrowing. So this goes back to things I've taught in other trainings, which includes being offered a choice between two loans, one with a high interest rate and one with a low interest rate. Almost everyone selects the low interest rate. And while in concept that makes the best sense, in reality, if I were to tell you that the high interest rate loan was paid off in, say, 10 months and the low interest rate loan was paid off in, say, 30 years, most people will switch their answer and take the higher interest rate loan. Because we know, common sense has already taught us, life experience has taught us that paying high interest rate loans over a very short period of time will amount in just a very small amount of interest. Whereas low interest rate loans over a very long period of time will result in really high interest costs. So it's not about the rate as much as it is about the total costs of interest. So we're going to be looking at all three of these categories while we're exploring the options that are best for P&S here. As we can see that this total, which happens to be the highest target rate and highest interest rate, that's not common, it doesn't always work that way, it becomes very easy for us to decide that this will likely be the very first item that we attack and eliminate. So we've got a $6,106 total outstanding balance that will be paid off using this new debt weapon account. So we've got availability here of $100,000. We're going to pay off this $6,106, and we're going to free up that $151 minimum payment obligation, which increases the cash flow now to $2,335 per month. This is fantastic. What a huge increase to cash flow without making any more money. Now, we still have the exact same amount of debt, and we will have a minimum payment on this account technically, but we're going to wash away that minimum payment through a technique that we call paycheck or rent check parking. This is income parking. Any stream of income that comes in, we can park it against this account and still get access to that money anytime we need it. We're going to replace the inadequacies of our checking and savings accounts. Think about it. When you put your money in checking and savings, what are you getting for that? How much are you earning every month by having money sitting in your checking and savings accounts? It's pathetic, isn't it? This is where the banks are making most of their money. There is permission from the Federal Reserve for the banking institutions to lend out multiple times what you deposit into your deposit accounts. So up to 9 times what you deposit can be lent out to other borrowers and charged interest for. And therefore, the banks create the majority of the cash in this country through that process known as fractional reserve lending. But what are you earning in exchange for that? Very little, right? So it's a broken system. It's really kind of a legal form of Ponzi scheming, if you ask me. We're going to manipulate the way the debts are being serviced completely legally, and even with the support of the banks. The banks don't mind allowing what we teach. Now, if everybody was doing it, it wouldn't surprise me if the rules changed. But right now, a very small percentage of Americans will ever even discover what you've stumbled into here. So the chances of this changing are very low. So we've now paid off one major account. You can see the other 0% accounts that aren't reporting to current credit aren't having an impact, obviously, against us. There's no reason to pay those off. So we're going to leave those for now. I'm also then going to come up here and start to identify the other highest accounts. And we can see one here, this Sally Mae number 4, student loan number 4, which is hers, is a $2,085 outstanding balance. Let's go ahead and get a calculator up here. So we've got a $2,085 balance. We're going to add that to the 6106 for the current balance on this debt weapon. Now we have an $8,191 balance. And the minimum payment obligation on this has also now eliminated on this student loan. We're already over $200 worth of increase to cash flow. It's almost a 10% increase to cash flow with no additional income being earned. And this is right away. Okay, so this could literally happen within the next couple of months. All right, so let's take a look and see if any of these other accounts can be attacked now. Of course they can, but it doesn't necessarily make sense. We've got an $8,191 balance. We do know that every month if we put the income against this account, it will exceed the total sum. $10,348 is larger than the current outstanding balance on that new debt weapon. So as we're paycheck parking, as we're income parking against that balance, we're paying it down to almost zero, if not at least zero, which means that as we're utilizing the amount to come back up in terms of paying the bills, we're going to pay very little interest on this account. And at the end of each month, our new cash flow of $2,385 will remain parked against that $8,191 balance. So it means I can divide this by that current net cash flow position to determine roughly how many months it will take before we can satisfy that balance in full. And we can see here that it's under 3.5 months. So this account, 3.5 months down the road, is paid off. Now we have other balances. We've been making payments on these other accounts for 4 months. I'm not going to factor that in to this equation just yet because it's having a very limited impact so far, but I will give credit to what it will become here shortly. I'm going to just attack the next account in line. I can see here a 10.6% interest rate on this Sally Mae loan. Now, we're only going to focus our last 4 months worth of payments on this account. 4 months at $285 per month on this account is another $1,140 having been paid toward this account, of which a 10.6% interest rate is being charged. So very likely that maybe only the $705 of this balance has been paid off, leaving about a $17,000 sum. Okay, so we've got $17,000 that we're going to attack with this debt weapon now and free up not just this balance, but the $285 per month that's being paid. And guess what? When we eliminate that, the new net cash flow position has increased to $2,670 per month. It's another 10% increase to cash flow without making any more money. Cash flow is increased now by over $500 per month, and we're only 4 months in. Now, what are we going to do? We're going to start paycheck parking against this account again. So the rent, the paychecks, any other streams of revenue will all go against this account. All the bills will come out and be paid. We're going to be paying for monthly personal and business expenses every month using a credit card account that we're earning big rewards on. And we're going to pay that credit card in full using the debt weapon, thereby paying zero interest on those credit card accounts. So when we do this, the cash flow remains parked against that $17,000. Cash flow now being $2,670. Meaning that this second cycle is satisfied in full in under 6.5 months. So we have 3.5 months and 6.5 months, a total of 10 months down the road now. and this second cycle has been eliminated in full. Now, guess what? We've been making 10 months worth of payments on all of these accounts. Let's go ahead and factor those in now so that we don't fall short and miss them. So we've got $390 worth of payments at 8.5%. Let's just knock this thing down by a couple $100. $3,889 now becomes $3,689. We've got $265 payments over that 10-month period. That's $2,650 at 2.9%. Obviously, the vast majority of that going toward interest costs. I'm just going to knock this thing down by $2,271 to make the math really easy and be conservative. So we're going to leave a $16,000 balance on the automobile come 10 months from now. We've got $46 payments totaling $460 over a 10-month period on $4,559. This is a 0%, so it's 100% principal. In order to keep the math really easy, I'm just going to knock off, I don't know, let's say $300. So we're going to call this thing 32. We'll just knock $359 off instead. We'll call it $4,200. We've got $84 worth of payments, all principal at 0%. This is $840 over a 10-month period. We're going to just knock this thing down to $7,500. We've got $70 in minimum payments over 10 months. That's $700 in principal reduction over that period of time. We're just going to knock this thing down to $6,500. As you can see, I'm being completely conservative on everything we go through in here, just to, at least acknowledging that everything we walk through will be in some way inaccurate. So I would rather be inaccurate towards the conservative side, since there will be unexpected circumstances along the way. We've got $70 worth of minimum payments. 10 months in, that's $700 at 0%. So this thing has become $5,800. We've got $122 worth of minimum payments on this business account. That's $1,220 of principal over this period of time. I'm just going to knock this thing down to $11,000. We've got $16 in minimum monthly payments over the course of 10 months is $160 at 0%, all going toward principal. So this one, $1,460, we'll call it. Now let's look at the student loans. $155 over 10 months, $1,550 at 4%. We'll just call this $1,000. Be super conservative about it and knock it down to $23,914. We've got $337 payments at 10.2%. That's over 10 months, $3,370. I don't know. Let's go ahead and knock this thing down to, we'll say $19,000, dropping it by $2,200. So a lot of interest on that one, just to be conservative. And then we've got $421 payments on this big student loan number 5 at a 6.5% interest rate. That's $4,210 worth of payments over that 10-month period of time. I'm just going to knock this thing down by $3,000 and call it $61,858. Hopefully you're following along okay. Guys, listen, a lot of people watch these classes and either have to rewatch them over and over in order to catch on, or go back and watch some of our more popular classes, because this can be confusing, especially if this is the first video that you've checked out on our channel. Go back and watch some of the most popular classes in order to get a sense of the vocabulary that I'm using, as well as being able to track the 3 steps that I'm following throughout this process. So now coming back up and deciding 10 months down the road what we need to attack, it's important to remember that these 0% accounts are likely going to be expiring sometime around this point. So for purposes of this example, I'm just going to assume we're attacking all $30,000 of remaining balances on these come this point in the example. $29,960 being paid off with these debt weapons. That's going to eliminate these balances here. That also frees up another $338 worth of cash flow. And as you can see, that $338 worth of cash flow is an enormous boost to the current cash flow position based on the ratios. So if I were to free this up and no longer have to pay this, you can see that we now have a minimum monthly payment here. So let's address that quickly. When I talk about income parking, what I'm saying is that no income should be sitting in checking and savings accounts any longer than necessary. So if we just simply pass through the unnecessary balance on checking and savings and keep just a minimum threshold that allows us to remain comfortable and sleep at night, that will allow us to keep our money working for us perpetually while it's sitting against this debt weapon. And as we pay this down, the money is always still available. So we're just using it and then paying it back, using it and then paying it back over and over and over again. So as we're paycheck or rent check parking the income, that counts as the minimum monthly payments on this account. That's why we don't have another payment that's being recognized on this spreadsheet. It's unnecessary. So as we paycheck park, we know that this $29,960 is going to be paid back with the leftover cash flow every month, which has now exceeded over $3,000 per month. And that means that another 10 months down the road, this account has been paid back to zero. Let's call it 11 months to be really conservative and account for the interest costs that will be associated with this debt weapon over that short period of time. So we've got 11 months added to the first 10 months. We're now 21 months in on this example, and this cycle has now been paid back to zero. So we've got another 11 months worth of payments on all the accounts that are outstanding. I'm going to just multiply it times 10 in order to keep it super simple. Okay, so again, another $390 worth of payments at 8.5% on this home equity line of credit. I'm going to knock this thing down by another $300 to account for interest. We've got $265 at 2.9%. Again, that's $2,650, low interest rate. I'm going to knock this thing down by another $2,000. It's now at $14,000 or less. We've got $155 payments at 4%, another $1,550 worth of payments being made. Let's just call this thing $1,000. And again, as you can see, I'm being super conservative with the interest that they're going to pay. That's way too generous. $337 worth of payments at 10.25%, $3,370 worth of payments. I don't know, let's knock this down by another couple $1,000. And in fact, I'm going to even knock that one down by 500 more just because I think it's getting a little bit outrageous as far as how conservative I'm being here. We've got $4,210 being paid at 6.5% on this big nut. So we've got, I don't know, let's call it $3,500 or so that was reduced. Let's just call this thing $58,000. We'll call it $58,500. Okay, so hopefully you're tracking what I'm doing here. I'm just simply acknowledging all the payments that have been made over that next 11-month cycle that we just went through just to make sure that we've got our balances correct as we're attacking our next accounts. So now we're looking at these balances. I'm going to eliminate this HELOC. $3,389 is going to be paid off using this debt weapon. And that's going to free up this $39 per month. While it doesn't do a lot in the way of cash flow, it's going to save quite a bit in the way of actual interest costs. You can see our other balances, it's somewhat of a debate, but we've got a really great interest rate on this Kia. So even though it would free up a slightly higher amount of cash flow than say the $22,900, it's probably best at this point to attack this student loan number 2 of $16,500. So if we were to take $16,500 along with the $3,389, we're looking at about $19,889. So just under $20,000 as an outstanding balance to free up this account, another $337 per month as well. So they've freed up just under another $400 worth of cash flow. And check it out. We're now at $3,384 per month in leftover disposable income. And we're less than 2 years in on this example at this point. They started with just over $2,000 worth of cash flow. So without making any more money, they have well over 50% increase to their cash flow position at this stage. So let's go back here to this cycle, and this $19,889, when dividing that by the new cash flow position of $3,384, which would be the remaining amount after the paycheck and rent check parking process took place, we can see that this latest cycle will be paid back in under six months. So this is now paid back. We're at 27 months now. So we've got another 6 months worth of payments that have been made on these various accounts. 6 months. We'll go ahead and factor these in real quickly here so we can do the math. We've got $265 over 6 months is $1,590 worth of payments at 2.99%. I'm going to knock this thing down to, let's say, $12,750 worth of principal reduction. We've got $155 worth of payments being made at 4% on the student loan number 1 over a 6-month period is $930. I'm just going to knock this thing down to $22,250. We've got $58,500 remaining on this one. $421 payments over that 6-month period is $2,526 worth of payments at 6.5%. This thing came down by another couple $1,000. And we're now left with these balances. So let's take a quick gander. We've got this 2.9% rate with a 2% target rate. We've got a much lower target rate with a slightly higher interest rate on this one. Because we can eliminate the full amount quickly and get this cash flow, I'll probably attack this car, $12,750 being paid with the debt weapon. Keep in mind that all the additional capital available as we're collecting debt weapons over the next coming years. Again, at this point, we're already into 2019, right? So we're able to actually start to collect even more than 100,000. There might be 150,000 or 250,000 available at this point. What I'm using is a very small portion, so the remaining liquid availability can be used to create wealth. They can be using this to invest in their new income streams as planned. I'm not factoring in those new income streams into this example, even though once they have them, everything that we're discussing will be sped up. So you can see we've paid off this automobile now with a $265 bump to cash flow. That brings their new cash flow position to $3,649 per month, meaning that this next cycle will be paid off in just 3.5 months. So we're now at 2 years, 10 months, 27 months plus 3.5. So we're at what, about 30.5 months at this point, still well under 3 years, 30.5 months total. And this $12,750 cycle has been paid back to zero. So we've made a couple additional payments here, another 3.5 months, let's just call it 3 to be conservative, $155 payments, $465 worth of payments have been made. We're just going to call this $22,000 now. We've got $421 being paid every month on this last student loan, times 3 months is another $1,263 is 6.5%. We'll call this another $1,000 reduction. And at this point, we're just going to pay off the lowest amount so that we can free up this full $155 right now. You can see their new cash flow position, $3,800. We've got $22,000 that's owed. Paycheck and rent check parking, we'll have this one paid back in another 6 months. So we're now at 30.5 months plus 6, 36.5 months. We're exactly 3 years in on this example, and they only have one large, I might add, student loan remaining. So let's call this $421 worth of payments over that 6-month period, $2,526. I'm going to knock this thing down by another $2,000. So they owe about $53,500 on this last student loan, which we're going to wipe out. This thing gets paid off, it frees up another $421 per month. Take a look at this. That's well over another 10% increase to the current cash flow position by the time they get to this stage. So their new cash flow is now going to be well over $4,000 per month. You can see here that in literally 3 years, they were able to double their cash flow position, and almost all of their non-mortgage related debt has been paid in full. Now they've got this big sum of $53,500 remaining, but when we're paycheck parking against this and we have this $4,225 remaining in the account each month, this thing is going to be paid back in roughly another 11 months. Call it 12. So we're now at about 48 months, 4 years down the road, and they've paid back a ridiculous amount of non-mortgage related debt. Guys, if I were to ask a room of 100 people how many folks think they would have accomplished this in under 5 years, not one hand would have gone up in that room. With a change of behavior, with a more proactive approach to banking, you can see just what's possible here. And the best part about this is that the mortgage is the most exciting part. So let's dive into that. You can see here on the loan calculator page, I've input the numbers from the original loan amount that they started with Ocwen way back in the day. This opened in May of 2006. This is an 11-year-old mortgage. And if we scroll down this amortization schedule here to today's date, you can see here that as of May, they will still have owed about $193,000 worth of this mortgage. I'm going to scroll ahead to the payoff time, which was 4 years from now, of that non-mortgage and student loan debt, which will be May of 2021 here. And you'll see that they'll still owe $166,000 on this loan after they've made 181 payments on it. That's 15 years worth of payments. The even worse news behind this is if they continue over the next 15 years, the total interest cost that they'll have spent on this loan is almost $230,000 worth of interest. You can see $228,700. Absolutely absurd. There's no reason that anybody should target this as an objective just because the interest rates are record low. Instead, you can continue to invest while simultaneously preventing as much of this interest as possible. So I'm going to take what we call an MLS calculation. And in their case, because 4 years from now, we won't know exactly what the best MLS is to use, the MLS is an acronym for maximum lump sum. We talk about this in some of our flagship trainings. The maximum lump sum is the maximum amount that we can borrow from these debt weapons, like we've been doing, in order to protect their credit safely and apply that towards these debts and turn the banks against each other. And watch what happens. If I were to just use a placeholder here of 5 months times cash flow, so 5 months times cash flow being the MLS, that total would be a little over $21,000. 5 months times cash flow, in this case, a little over $21,000. In 4 years, we might use a 3-month multiplier or a 10-month multiplier. It depends on the debt weapon and it depends on their cash flow at this stage. If they've purchased other properties, we might be going a completely different direction and paying off a different property by this time. So this is where the fortune telling can become challenging. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to apply $21,125 lump sum payment starting May 1st of 2021, 4 years from now, after all of their non-mortgage related balances have been paid in full. So we're going to apply a $21,125 amount, and we're going to get that from this debt weapon. Same one that we've been using or a different one, depending on which is best serving our purpose at this time. Might be the same. We've got this $21,000 lump sum, and here's what I want you to take note of. $21,000 lump sum amount from another bank where we're turning the banks against each other will prevent a $21,000 interest cost over that period of time. Coincidental that those numbers match up. That's just where it is in this amortization, 181 payments in. The cool news about this, beyond that $21,000 savings, is that they get to repeat this process every 5 months. We've already done the math. We know that the cash flow, when used the right way, will have this paid back in just 5 months. Now, why are we not just using cash flow to apply it towards the mortgage? We get that question all the time. The answer is, where would they get the money to invest with? So what we're doing is we're replacing reserves, money they would have otherwise saved in checking and savings, but instead are using to pay off debt, with new debt weapons that they can borrow from to acquire the new asset. This allows us to accomplish the objective of asset growth and liability elimination simultaneously. That's the secret to debt weapons. So every 5 months, we're going to apply another $21,125. So we're going to go from payment 181 to 186, from 186 to 191, 191 to 196. Makes the math easy when we're doing it every 5 months, of course. And I think this will be our last one of 95.44. Okay, so now you can see the balance is zero here, right? Zero balance. Look at this. They're saving almost $60,000 off the price tag of this home. What house in your neighborhood right now would you walk past if you could get a $60,000 discount and it was of the quality it should be? If it was literally $60,000 less expensive than it should be, why would you pass that up? And yet we can accomplish that by financing our properties the right way and turning debt into wealth. So look at this. Not only have they saved $60,000, but look at the date. November 1st, 2023. It's almost May of 2017 right now. This is 6.5 years from now. And they will be 100% mortgage and non-mortgage related debt free. These lump sums will be paid back, this will be paid off, and this mortgage will be paid off. So take a look at their cash flow summary now. They got the same income coming into the household every single month, the same income, and yet without going on any strict budgets, the same expenses every month, we've bridged the gap between the net and the gross cash flow. 6.5 years, 100% debt free. Doesn't sound half bad, right? So as you know, your first step is obviously to take action. If you have not had an expert like us that can go through something like this in just a handful of minutes and prove that there's a much better way of doing things, then now's the time to do that. So go into the description, click the link, make sure you sign up for your one exclusive coaching session. We're going to give that to you as our gift to you. You can go in and get your cash flow cruncher by visiting cashflowcruncher.com. That's cashflowcruncher.com. You can see how it's spelled right here at the top of the screen. You can go through the quick start process. We're not going to ask you for any confidential information like account numbers or social security numbers. We just simply need generic information so we can determine what your approximate average conservative net cash flow position is at the end of each month. If you like these types of videos and you want to see more of them, make sure you smash that like button, share them with your community. Make sure that your loved ones are able to see this because, guys, we've been haunted with debt as a country, as a society for far too long. So if we want to change the social economics of this country, it's going to require all of us coming together and just really empowering ourselves with the knowledge we should have been given in school. Unfortunately, that's just not the way it works. So let's all go further, faster, financially together, and we're happy to play a role in that in your life as much as possible. So we'll look forward to seeing you on that one coaching session. In the meantime, check out all of our other videos, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks so much for checking this one out.